Living Legend. The format, not the system, right? Living Legend format is a thrilling evolution of Classic Constructed, where the mighty heroes who have achieved Living Legend status, along with their iconic signature weapons, have been unshackled from the confines of conventional play. A realm where old heroes find new glory and where players can unleash the full potential of their decks, step into the shoes of these revered champions, and embrace the power of unparalleled card synergies, or step up to the challenge with your contender to take down these renowned titans. Are you ready to test the strength of Living Legends? Now, what I'm trying to emphasize here is the S's, the plurals, right? Living Legend, to me, is meant to be the second life for every single hero in the game. If a hero has dominated the meta, or even just, scraped its way to the top, even in a more balanced stage, and is now part of the Living Legend pantheon, then they should have every right to be a competitive choice within the format. But that is not the reflection given by James White, and at the end of the day, he is the creator, right? So he should absolutely have the final say. But I do just want to, share my own perspective on Living Legend and why this is a very short-sighted response. Now, I don't use Twitter, so I have knowledge of this thanks to Riddlerman's Discord. Again, great asset to the community. By far my best go-to place to try and keep up to date within the community, right? If you don't know who Riddlerman is, in all honesty, check him out. Fantastic Flesh and Blood creator, but we have this chain on Twitter. So TCG Talk is essentially complaining about Stravo, right? And James White's response. The sooner you get past thinking that every hero has to be viable in Living Legend, the better. Living Legend is the format for the most powerful things in Fab to exist. That is Stravo, right? So my big grievance with this idea and this response is the gulf between Stravo and everything else, right? Had Stravo not just been this dominant force, then sure, having one hero dominate until X thing comes along, it would be okay. The problem is I only see two outcomes for correcting Stravo. Either Stravo is heavily nerfed, or cards are heavily power crept so that they can keep up with Stravo. And why I think this response is really short-sighted is it's backed by some of the other mentalities that James White is holding in relation to Stravo. We have the follow-up to this chain, which is the most common answer by a huge margin. When I asked players at Worlds what they were most looking forward to, it was getting to play Stravo again. Yes, he's hugely powerful and also hugely loved. Now, how long will that mentality last, right? If he dominates every single event from here till the end of time, or again, we get to that stage where things are heavily power crept, right? Do you think this mentality will honestly hold true? Everyone loved Stravo when he came out and he was gone in a flash. So yes, people wanted to experience, people wanted to play the deck in a proper competitive setting, right? And enjoy Stravo, but it will only last so long. And the problem that I have is this is a slippery slope, right? To change the outline of Living Legend, right? From this whole heroes, this whole champions, this whole everyone thrown into the ring, and to some extent be more of an even playing field where, depending on one card that comes out, everything shifts to what we have, which is Stravo. Stravo, as James White has said, is the most powerful thing in Flesh and Blood. To me, that is a pivot from what a lot of us rationalize Living Legend to be. Again, the point where, yes, the most powerful decks could all be utilized, but just that they could all be utilized and it wasn't so tilted towards Bravo. The other response that I do have grievance with is this. So, is there a world where we can see hero-specific card restrictions or banning? Unlikely. I think that is utterly the wrong response, right? Just a flat out unlikely versus something like it is a possibility that we have been looking into And at this current point in time, we don't see its use, or something a bit more profound like that, I think would have gone a long way. Because the simple truth is, again, this would be the best way to handle Stravo, right? Have restrictions that just impact Stravo, and again, try to bring him a little bit closer into the playing field of Living Legend, rather than these restrictions, which then target Oldhim, right? Target Icelanders to some extent, and cripple those decks along with Stravo. So not only have you not really brought Stravo down completely, right? You have then crippled or increased the gap between Stravo and these other decks. And to me, that's just simply not the solution. Now, TCG talk. So in all seriousness, I would just rather see Stravo get the hammer and be removed from Fab altogether. I know this is drastic and not LSS's intent with the format, but the hero was a mistake design-wise and shouldn't be in any format of Fab, right? Again, I think all of us fall on the sort of same side of that, which is no, right? No hero should ever be removed from the game, especially in the Living Legend format. But I do think there is common ground in, yes, Stravo is a fan favorite for now. Stravo is a fun deck for now, but how long, right, before that's not the case? And it needed changes. And again, we go through this life cycle where, right, it's the jazz right now, but then again, it gets tiresome. It becomes awful. It becomes boring to be a part of that format of the game, because again, something wasn't done early on to extend, you know, our opinions and our rationales towards Stravo, right? Is it better to have the over-the-top excitement now, or have it gradual through actual personalized restrictions that directly target Stravo? And again, you don't have to completely neuter him, but you can bring him more in line with the other heroes that are meant to shine in the Living Legend format. Again, I'm not saying James White is wrong, right? At the end of the day, I absolutely respect what choices he and LSS make, because it is their game, and we should be honored, right, that we get to vocalize this much of an opinion towards the game, and, you know, the amount of impact that the community actually does have, because that is, again, a fantastic thing to see in a TCG that is gaining as much popularity and traction as Flesh and Blood. So if they do want Stravo, again, just to be the epitome of Living Legend, right, and the only point where this gets overturned is once everything else catches up to him, then I guess that's fine. But I do think it is short-sighted to think that is what the Living Legend format is going to be. Again, especially given this little blurb, given the policy and the mentality between card utility. Again, to me, it's this trifecta of card utility is preserved through, again, reprinting a hero, right, and making the cards legal, again, in the main formats, or having the cards maintain their value in the Living Legend format. Now, unfortunately, again, if you have a dominant deck, right, then that just devalues all the other cards, because once they leave Classic Constructed, right, they don't see a second life in Living Legend. Rather, they're tossed aside because everyone is funneled towards Stravo. And then in terms of Classic Constructed, again, their whole idea is not to make a carbon copy of any hero that does reach Living Legend. You can't absolutely preserve the utility of cards. Those cards are going to be devalued one way or the other, because they won't mesh one for one with the new iteration of a hero. So I do think the Living Legend format is a lot more important and impactful to the life cycle of the game, the life cycle of cards, to have this sense of, again, short-sighted answers, right? We don't want to do specific bans. We want Stravo to be the format because at this current point in time, everyone wants that. Opinions change, and I'm hoping that their mentality towards Living Legend will change as things progress. Because again, this will not last forever. Okay? If Stravo remains the dominant force in Living Legend for a year, for 2 years, people will get absolutely sick of it. And there will be very minimal growth in the Living Legend format, when the Living Legend format should be one of the cornerstones of the game. Again, it is where heroes are meant to see a renewed life. Not heroes. And then lastly, it sort of comes across to me right, that the thoughts expressed in this article compared to James White's own personal thoughts and opinions, right, are in slight contention with one another, right? James has taken this very hard stance on what he believes is the correct path forward, and then as written by Brian, it's a bit more flexible, right? And that is also, to some degree, worrisome, because there should be a concise, objective goal for Living Legend to reach. And again, Stravo. We believe Stravo will continue to be a fixture in the metagame despite these changes, hopefully fulfilling his role as format flag bearer in a much healthier fashion. And then strive to make Living Legend a format we're all excited to play for many years to come. Straight away, I'm sorry, but those are in direct opposition, right? If you want Stravo to be the flag bearer for Living Legend, that's fine. But it does mean that the game will become stale, right? If there's not change, if there's not restrictions geared towards Stravo and just Stravo, then this is going to not be a healthy format, right? There's no way to do that if there isn't going to be flexible change. And again, it's that gulf that Stravo has over every other hero. Unless the game completely power creeps, right? I don't think there is a proper way to close that gap other than personalized restrictions. There's no reason to affect all these other heroes, right? Again, Oldhim being taken down a peg, Icelander, and then even just the general use of Warmonger's diplomacy is harsh. It could be a great tool against Stravo, but now everyone has to only run one copy. I don't understand, again, yes, it was unlikely, but unlikely is closer to no than a maybe, right? At least to me. And I think that's a wrong stance to have when these are the objectives laid out, that they want the Living Legend format to be a competitive ecosystem, right? It's not going to grow and develop if Stravo is the forefront and always going to be that forefront flag bearer. It's critical we have a place to revisit heroes. Again, emphasis on everyone who reaches the crowning achievement of becoming a Living Legend. Now, it's fully understandable that they won't reach a state where it is just completely diverse. But everyone is almost in agreement, right? That Stravo, in some form or fashion, is going to be a problem, right? It doesn't matter if you only think slightly or you're on the high end and for whatever reason you do think he should be banned. We all know Stravo is top dog. And the only way to have this greater competitive diversity is to tackle those issues. And tackle those issues directly, not broadly. There is no reason to, again, restrict everyone rather than just pinpointing Stravo. I really can't agree with these blanket restrictions. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the topic. Hope you enjoyed.